What's going on, guys? It's Rylan with Rylan's Amazing Photography, and today we are going to be discussing one of the 3 most vital settings in photography, which is shutter speed. I'm going to be telling you all everything you need to know, from how to control and change your shutter speed to what does it do. We're going to be covering all of those topics in this video. More than what I just said, it's going to be a great video. However, before we get into today's video, I want to remind you guys to go down below and like today's video. While you're down there, you might as well go ahead and subscribe and hit the notification bell. It would really help me out a lot, and I would really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into today's video on shutter speed. One of the 3 most vital settings in photography is shutter speed, the other 2 being aperture and ISO. Shutter speed is answerable for 2 particular things in photography, which is changing the brightness of your photo and creating dramatic effects either by freezing action or blurring motion. In this video, I'll explain everything you would like to understand about it in a very simple language. First, shutter speed exists due to the camera's shutter, which is basically like a curtain in front of the camera sensor that stays closed until the camera fires. When the camera fires, the shutter opens and fully exposes the camera sensor to the sunshine or light that has more responsibility than your lens. After the sensor is finished collecting the sunshine, the shutter closes immediately, stopping the sunshine from hitting the sensor. The button that fires the camera is additionally called the shutter or shutter button because it triggers the shutter to open and shut. So what is shutter speed? Shutter speed is the length of the time that camera shutter is open, exposing light onto your camera sensor. Essentially, it's how long your camera spends taking a photograph. This features a few important effects in how your images will appear. When you use an extended shutter speed, you finish up exposing your sensor for a big period of your time. The primary effect of it is to use motion blur. If your shutter speed is long, moving subjects in your photo will appear blurred along the direction of motion. This effect is employed by very often in advertisements of cars and motorbikes where there is speed and motion communicated to the viewer by intentionally blurring out the moving wheels. Motion blur. Slow shutter speeds are wanted to photograph the Milky Way galaxy or other objects in the dead of night or in dim environments with a tripod. Landscape photographers may intentionally use a long shutter speed to form a wave of motion on rivers and waterfalls while keeping everything else completely sharp. For example, look at this example image of a creek I took in Tennessee. On the opposite hand, shutter speed may be wanted to do just the alternative, freeze motion. If you utilize an especially fast shutter speed, you'll eliminate motion from fast-moving subjects like birds on the wing or cars driving past. If you utilize a quick shutter speed while taking pictures of water, each droplet will carry on the air completely sharp, which could not even be visible to our own eyes. It's the camera's way of freezing the motion in midair. All of the above is achieved by simply controlling the shutter speed. In summary, quick shutter speeds freeze action while long ones create a control of motion after you photograph moving subjects. So how is shutter speed measured? Shutter speeds are typically measured in fractions of a second, while they are under a second. As an example, 1/4 means 1/4 of a second, while 1/250th means 1/250th of a second, or 4 milliseconds. Most modern DSLRs and mirrorless cameras can handle shutter speeds up to 1/4000th of a second, while some can handle much quicker shutter speeds of 1/8000th of a second or faster. On the opposite hand, the longest available shutter speed on most DSLRs or mirrorless cameras is often 30 seconds. You'll use an extended shutter speed by using external remote triggers or the self-timer feature on your camera if you think it's necessary. Shutter speed and exposure. The other important effect of shutter speed is on exposure, which relates to the brightness of a picture. If you utilize an extended shutter speed, your camera sensor gathers lots of sunshine and the results of the photo are quite bright. By employing a quick shutter speed, your camera sensor is just exposed to a tiny low fraction of sunshine, leading to a darker photo. Shutter speed and exposure brightness. However, shutter speed isn't the sole variable which affects the brightness of a picture. There are also aperture and ISO together with the particular brightness of the scene before you. So you've got some flexibility when you're picking a shutter speed, but you would like to choose your other settings very wisely. Shutter speed may be an important tool to capture a photograph of the right brightness. On a sunny day, you will have to use a quick shutter speed in order to ensure that your photo isn't overexposed. Or if it's dark outside, an extended shutter speed is also necessary to avoid a photograph that's too dark, which in turn could require a tripod thanks to motion blur from hand holding the camera. For several people, this can be the best reason to regulate shutter speed, to make sure that your photos are the right brightness. Still, motion blur concerns are vital and should not be overlooked. Fast, slow, and long shutter speeds. A fast shutter speed is often whatever it takes to freeze action. If you're photographing birds, you probably will be 1/1000th of a second or faster. However, for general photography of slower moving subjects such as people, you could possibly be able to take pictures at 1/200th of a second, 1/100th of a second, or perhaps even longer without introducing any motion blur. Long shutter speeds are typically above 1 second, at which point you will pretty much have to use a tripod to get sharp images. You'd use long shutter speeds for different kinds of low light night photography, or to capture movement intentionally. If anything in your scene is moving after you use long shutter speeds, it will appear very blurry. In between shutter speeds from 1/100th of a second to 1 second are still considered relatively slow. You will not be able to handle them without introducing camera shake, especially when you're shooting with your hands near the 1 second mark. How do you set your shutter speed? Most cameras handle shutter speeds automatically by default. When the camera is set to auto mode, the shutter speed is chosen by the camera without any of your input, and so is aperture and ISO. However, you should still set shutter speed manually if necessary. By putting the camera into shutter priority mode, you decide on the shutter speed, and also the camera automatically selects the aperture. By setting the camera to manual mode, you decide on both the shutter speed and aperture manually. There's still an auto ISO option even on manual mode that you can still use, although I personally prefer to handle the ISO on your camera manually. Well, that's it. That is pretty much everything you need to know about shutter speed. Something that I didn't mention is shutter priority mode is found on your camera by moving your camera's dial to the S on your camera. The S stands for shutter speed, so if you want to adjust your shutter speed, just move your camera's mode dial over to S, and that's going to give you the ability to change your shutter speed. Thank you all so much for watching today's video. It means the world to me. If this video helped you, feel free to share it with your friends and go down below and like the video. While you're down there giving the video a big thumbs up, make sure that you click the red subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video and you can be the first person to watch it. Leave a nice comment, tell me that this helped you. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.